reason you need to kill us right now.
The show didn't end the way it was supposed to, and that's exactly why Rick and Morty Season 9, Episode 1, Ending Explained. The scene everyone missed changes the whole season is more than just a breakdown. It's a warning hiding in plain sight. Because if you rewatch that final scene carefully, there's a detail so subtle it almost feels invisible on first viewing, but once you catch it,
Anyways, good thing I'm not a Rick.
the entire episode stops making sense the same way again. And the show is clearly hinting that this wasn't a mistake, a joke, or random chaos. It was a deliberate setup. The ending doesn't hit like a normal Rick and Morty conclusion.
You do have a crush.
You needed the cops to win.
There's no explosive twist, no immediate villain reveal, no classic reset that wipes the slate clean for the next episode. Instead, what we get is something far more unsettling. Continuity that doesn't fully close. The environment doesn't quite settle. Background elements feel slightly misaligned, like reality itself forgot to finish rendering the scene properly. At first glance, it feels like standard absurdity, but the more you sit with it, the more it feels engineered. Because Rick Sanchez notices everything. That's the rule the show has built its entire foundation on. If something in the multiverse is off, Rick doesn't ignore it. He dissects it, dismantles it, or, at the very least, comments on it with suspicion. But in this ending, he doesn't react. He moves forward like nothing happened, and that silence is not comfort, it's evidence. The show is clearly hinting that whatever is happening in this moment is either beyond Rick's immediate detection or being actively suppressed from his awareness. Then there's Morty. Morty's reaction timing is slightly wrong in a way that's hard to explain but easy to feel. He doesn't interrupt when he normally would. He doesn't question the inconsistencies he usually picks up on. Instead, he follows Rick's lead almost too smoothly, like something has dampened his instinct to push back. That subtle shift matters more than any explosion or chase sequence. Because Morty has always been the audience's emotional compass. If Morty feels off, the entire narrative balance tilts with him. The show is clearly hinting that this ending isn't about what just happened in the episode. It's about what has already started happening beneath it. A pattern that isn't visible through the plot alone. Something in the structure of reality itself is being adjusted, quietly, without announcement. No villain stepping forward. No declaration of war. Just small inconsistencies stacking up in ways that don't feel accidental anymore. And that's where the theory starts to lock in. Because when you line up the final scene with everything that came before it, you realize the episode is behaving less like a standalone story and more like a controlled experiment. Every outcome feels slightly guided. Every resolution feels slightly incomplete.
Oh, I hate you, right? I do. It's why I try to just text.
Even the humor lands differently, less chaotic, more calculated, like it's being used to distract from structural changes happening in the background. That's not typical Rick and Morty randomness, that's direction. The show is clearly hinting that someone, or something, is shaping outcomes instead of reacting to them. Not through force, not through invasion, but through adjustment. Like reality is being edited in real time, so that Rick and Morty never see the full picture at once. And if that's true, then the ending of episode 1 isn't a cliffhanger, it's a blind spot. And blind spots in this universe are never harmless. Because Rick's entire identity depends on being ahead of the system. If the system is now ahead of him, even slightly, then Season 9 isn't just another adventure cycle. It becomes a slow reveal of control slipping away without him realizing it in real time. Which brings everything back to that final scene. Nothing screams, nothing breaks, nothing announces itself. But something changes anyway. And once you notice that change, you realize the episode never truly resolves. It simply hands control to something off screen. And that's the real ending everyone missed. And once that realization settles in, the entire structure of Season 9 starts to look less like isolated chaos and more like a carefully staged progression. The show is clearly hinting that every random detour Rick and Morty take after this point isn't random at all. It's being guided through invisible pressure points in reality. Not a puppet master pulling strings in the traditional sense, but a system nudging outcomes just enough so certain paths become unavoidable. That subtle steering changes the meaning of every decision they make from episode 1 onward. What makes it more unsettling is how naturally Rick adapts without questioning the shift. Normally, even the smallest inconsistency triggers his paranoia, his scanning, and his breakdown of physics and probability. But here, he moves forward like he's unconsciously accepting rules that haven't been explained yet. The show is clearly hinting that this isn't ignorance, it's adjustment. As if Rick himself were being conditioned to operate inside a version of reality that is no longer fully transparent to him, even though he believes he still holds the highest level of control. And that's where the real implication hits. If Rick can be quietly moved off-center without noticing, then the multiverse is no longer a sandbox he dominates. It's a system that can evolve around him. Every step after episode 1 becomes less about survival against external threats and more about uncovering why perception itself is being filtered. Because once you accept that the ending scene was edited by intent rather than coincidence, it becomes clear the real conflict of Season 9 isn't coming later. It already started in that moment, and almost nobody saw it happen. That's where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore.
He erases himself. Can we move this along?
The show is clearly hinting that episode 1's ending isn't just a setup for a single arc, it's the first visible crack in a much larger system-wide rewrite. Every time Rick and Morty step into a new situation after that moment, the outcomes feel slightly too clean, almost like chaos is being filtered before it reaches them. Not erased, not prevented, just reshaped into something that still looks random on the surface, but behaves with quiet intention underneath. And what makes it more disturbing is how little resistance the universe seems to offer. In earlier seasons, reality fought back in loud, chaotic ways. Collapsing timelines, unstable clones, rogue dimensions spiraling out of control. But now, the instability feels controlled. Almost calibrated. The show is clearly hinting that someone isn't just reacting to Rick anymore. They're anticipating him, smoothing out extremes before they even fully form. That level of pre-adjustment changes the stakes entirely, because it means Rick is no longer discovering problems. He's being allowed to discover only what fits inside a narrowed range of outcomes. Which brings everything back to that ending scene in episode 1, the moment everyone saw but didn't truly register. Because once you understand that reality itself may be under quiet management, that final shot stops being a tease and starts feeling like a signature. Not a cliffhanger, but a mark left behind. Proof that something is already in place, already active, already shaping what Rick and Morty are allowed to experience next. And the most unsettling part is this. If that system is stable enough to remain unnoticed this long, then Season 9 isn't building toward its twist. It is already inside it.
All right, get him out of here. I want this kid processed yesterday.